Hi, Jesse Williams, Harvesting Specialist with Case IH. I'm on the farm today. We've got the 8230 backed out of the shed, and we're going to go through this machine and we're going to service the DEF system on it. So this machine is a Tier 4A DEF system. Our 40 series and 50 series machines are going to be a Tier 4B DEF system. So service is pretty similar on both of those systems. I've got a Tier 4B module here as well. We'll take a look at that and look at where the filters are, a few of the differences with that system. So when we look at these Tier 4 systems, these SCR injection systems with our machines, this is an EPA regulation. It's something we were required to implement on our machines to meet the EPA clean air regulations. And with that, we've got to monitor those emissions, and anytime there's an issue with that machine that could lead to high emissions, we have to derate that machine. That lets you as an operator know, hey, there's something going on with this emission system, it's not working right, and it kind of forces you into fixing that issue to keep your machine running. Now, the way our software works with this SCR only system is if we get a derate and we shut the machine down and we start it back up, it will come back on at full power until it sees that fault again. And we can go through that process 3 times before we get into what we call a permanent derate. When you get a permanent derate, you're basically in a limp home mode where you can move the machine, but it's going to operate at low throttle. You're not going to have much power, and you're going to have a dealer come out. They're going to have to hook their laptop up, find the issue, fix the issue, and reset that counter in the system to get you back running at full power. Now, with our software, the way it works, if you get the first or the second derate and you stop, you fix the issue yourself, you start the machine back up, and you run for 40 hours without getting that fault again, it will automatically reset you back to 3 restarts. So I typically recommend to customers, don't just sit there on the key switch, shutting the machine off and restarting it. You'll very quickly get into a state where you've got to have the dealer come out. Typically, a lot of times the issue is related to filters or contamination in the DEF. So we're going to take a look at how to go through, how to service those filters and clean those filters, and give you an idea how to do that. A lot of times you can run through and do that on your own, start the machine back up, it runs for 40 hours without the fault, you're back to 3 restarts, and you never had to sit in the side of the field waiting for the dealer to show up with the laptop. So we'll take a look at tools and supplies to go through and service this DEF system. Our first filter coming off the tank is going to be our inline filter. It's down behind this ladder that goes over the engine, kind of on the right hand side there. So we've got a new one of them from the dealership, and we'll post the part numbers at the bottom of the video. But that's what it looks like. It's just a fine mesh strainer. Now we may be able to clean this, so we'll take this one out and take a look at it here in a minute. When we leave that filter and go into the module, we have our inlet filter. So little small filter here presses in the inlet fitting on a Tier 4A. That one we can clean as well. It is a mesh filter as well. So with our main filter, when it plugs, we typically don't get a pressure fault with it. Typically what we will see then is we will get something like a high NOx fault. We can't push enough DEF through this filter to get the dosing rate that we need, and so we can't get the NOx down where they need to be. So the system thinks either it's making high NOx for some reason, or that it's got poor quality DEF in the tank. So you'll typically get high NOx or poor quality DEF when it's this filter. Now this filter has a 2-year, 3,600 hour service interval. So with this harvesting application, the majority of the tractor applications, the main thing is that we change it every 2 years. And I've got some guys that say every year when they change the oil before they go to the field, they just go through and change this filter. It's cheap insurance to make sure we don't have downtime in the field. As far as tools go, we've got a pair of pliers. Use these to release the clips on a lot of the connections. I've got a 1/16 and 15/16 wrench to take my inline filter apart. I've got a ratchet and 1¼ socket that will go on my main filter down there on the bottom. I've got a cup of water to rinse the screens off in. Now they do typically recommend that you use distilled water. If you don't have distilled water for cleaning these screens, it is probably fine to go ahead and clean them with just regular tap water. But what we want to do when we get done cleaning them is we want to take an air compressor, blow all the moisture off of that screen, and get it dry. That air compressor can kind of help clean that screen, get some of that crystallized depth out of the screen when we're blowing it off as well. So we also have our air compressor out here, and we're going to use that for blowing the screens out, but we're also going to start off by blowing off all of our connections that we're going to open up. So we want to get everything good and clean down here around the DEF module. We want to make sure around all these clips that we've got all the dust, dirt, debris off of them. Number one, I don't want to take that line off to change a filter and drop bean fuzz back inside of it where I'm going to plug something up downstream from it. Number two, I also, if I clean them off, it makes them easier to take apart. So you get that dirt out of that clip, it makes it easier to squeeze the clip, get it apart. It also makes sure when you go back together that that clip seats back right so you don't have a line that's going to pop off in the field and create issues. So we'll go ahead and take our air compressor. We're going to clean everything off good. So we'll go ahead and service our inline filter first. So when we're taking these lines apart, we look for, there's typically a white clip that you press or squeeze, and that's going to release the tangs and allow you to pull that clip apart. So this one's got a cover on it. And looking at this one, I do have a tab broke off of this. So that's something I'm going to want to fix before I go to the field. We do make kits. A lot of the dealers have a crimp tool and replacement fittings that we can replace the ends on these lines. You can see the other one down here. It has got the clip that we push in to release it. So this one, I can pull it, my one clip off by hand a little bit. And you kind of twist and pull on these. They've got an O-ring in there, a little bit of a press fit, and you can typically pull them apart then. So there's our main filter there, and it looks pretty clean, so I probably will not replace that. I'm just going to flush it out, blow it out, and put it back in, and we'll save the other one for later. So just rinse that off in our water. And then we'll clip our line back on. So when we go to service our inlet filter on our Tier 4As, if we follow the line from our inline filter around to the module, the inlet filter will be inside of that fitting going into the module. So we've got a plastic clip we squeeze together, and we give it a twist. Can use pliers sometime to squeeze that clip together, and we pull that line off. Once we've got the line off, a small sheet metal screw you can take and thread into the filter. Give it a pull, and we can take that filter out without damaging it to clean it. So here again, what we will typically do is rinse it out in water, and we can blow it out with air and reuse that filter. Now, low dollar part here, I think it was about $18 or something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and swap this one out since it is a little bit finer mesh screen, and that way I've got a new one going into harvest. So to install our new inlet filter, we just take the new filter, put it up inside the fitting, and press it in with our finger. Now, when I pulled that line off, that line had quite a bit of bean fuzz that had gotten inside it, so I wiped the fitting on the module off good, and I'm going to go ahead and take this line, blow it out with the air compressor, flush it out good with water, and then blow it out again before I put it back on. So I disconnected it from the outlet side of the inline filter. That way I can take the complete line assembly and go clean that off. So while we're taking a look underneath the pump, we're going to go ahead and change the main filter as well. So the main filter on a Tier 4A has a line that we have to take off of a fitting on it first. It's got the white plastic clip that we squeeze and we twist it. Pull that line off there. And then we've got a hex on there. So that's where we can take our ratchet and socket, get on that hex. Deep well socket would work a little better. We can thread that off a few turns, blow it off. And then take it the remainder of the way off. Once we've got it out, we can dump the DEF out of the bottom of the bowl and pull that filter out of there and change it. On our main filter, a couple different designs here, both interchangeable. In this case, both even the same part number, but do look a little bit different. The new one that I've got here, which has been on the shelf for a little while, has got the thick rubber gasket on either end, as well as it's got the O-ring in here where it's going to go up into the DEF module. This one just has the O-ring on this end, has a thick rubber gasket on this end. So this one, we put the thick rubber gasket down inside the cartridge. Now inside our cover there is an O-ring. We want to make sure that O-ring is in place. They send a new one with the kit, so you go ahead and replace that O-ring. Now we don't want to use any grease or Vaseline or anything like that on that O-ring. Anything other than DEF or distilled water in this system can contaminate the system and lead to catalyst issues. So take the new filter, we thread it on, get it hand tight. Then we will put this assembly back inside the housing and thread it back in. So we're going to go hand tight, then we'll put our ratchet on it, go about another eighth to a quarter of a turn. Then we clip our main line back on there. Once the line clips, give it a quick tug and make sure it's seated. So that got us through our Tier 4A service. We cleaned the inline filter, we swapped out the inlet filter, and we changed the main filter. So everything's clean or new and ready to go on this machine. Now if you've got a Tier 4B, your Tier 4B module looks a little different. Now on Flagship, it's still going to mount underneath the ladder going on up to the engine right here. If you've got a mid-range machine, Tier 4A or Tier 4B, you'll find your module kind of over there underneath the unloader saddle. So a little bit off to the side, but still fairly easy to get to. Now the inline filter is going to be the same. So that inline filter that we serviced on this Tier 4A, you will have on all your Tier 4Bs except for model year 17. Model year 17 had a sock filter in the tank. It was a larger surface area filter, and we thought that would give you more surface area, longer run life out of it. We had some issues with that, so a lot of the model year 17s we converted back to the inline filter, just like the prior machines and the current machines have. So you still got the inline filter, we changed it just like we talked about in the video. The inlet filter is a little bit different. So there's our inlet filter there. It is labeled on here. We can follow that line from the inline around to the inlet, and we can service it as well. So the nice thing about the Tier 4B, we take the line off. I don't have to pull that screen out. It's got a hex on here. This threads into the module, and I can unthread this from the module. So this one I've got finger tight, and I can take this whole fitting out. I can get this whole fitting and I can swap that out. So not a bad item to keep in the cab in case you have an issue in the field. You can swap this out in the field fairly quick and easy. The other thing that's different on our Tier 4B is our main filter. So our main filter does not have the line coming off of the housing like the Tier 4A, so we don't have to take a line off. We put a wrench on, turn the cover, take the cover off. There's a piece that goes down in there we take out. We pull this out. It's got an O-ring on either end, and we can replace this assembly. There again, just like the Tier 4A, every 2 years, 3,600 hours. So recommend doing this at least every 2 years. Not a bad idea to go ahead and do this when you change your oil. Kind of cheap insurance there. And we put that back in. So our other filter that we've got is our tank vent filter. And the tank vent filter on a Tier 4A machine, if you follow the lines over the engine, you will find that filter on the front of the engine. Tier 4B, you will have a canister filter that mounts near the unloader saddle. So if you look up from the DEF tank to the unloader saddle, you will see it's a stainless steel canister about that long, and that's your vent for the tank. So if that plugs up on you, a couple different things you'll notice. The machine may start up in the morning after you put DEF in it, run good, then you get some DEF pressure issues, or the machine may be hard to fill with DEF, which case the DEF is going in the tank, the air can't get back out of the tank, and it keeps clicking the nozzle out. So that's one thing to look at if you're having trouble filling the tank. There is also a screen down inside the tank fill. So on this one, to get that screen out, if I want to clean it, I've got to take the neck off here, pull this assembly off, and I can take that screen out and clean it. On a Tier 4B, it's got a couple tabs in there. You can turn it, you can pull that out, you can flush it out with water, blow it out with air, and put it back in there.